What's up, everybody? You are listening to Locked On Now NHL, local experts with the biggest stories on the ice. I'm your host, Daniella Bruce, and thank you for making Locked On Now your first listen every weekday. We've got our Locked On NHL host here to tell you everything you need to know from around hockey on Sunday. Let's start in Dallas, where the Stars put a beating on the visiting Bruins.
The biggest game.
The Dallas Stars made easy work of the Boston Bruins on Sunday, scoring 6 goals on the way to a low-stress end to the weekend. Our Locked On Stars host has a lot of goals to tell you about post-game.
Well, after one of their worst losses of the season, the Stars bounce back in a big way and get one of their best wins of this season against the Bruins. Hey, everyone. Dane Lewis here with on Stars podcast, coming to you after the Stars' massive win over the Boston Bruins. The Stars absolutely blow out the Bruins from the get-go. Absolute utter dominance on the offensive side of the ice, which is a nice change of pace from what we saw back on Friday when they took on the Washington Capitals. They were shut out 5-0 in that game, but now they put up 6 goals against the Bruins, only allowing one. Jake Ottinger has a great night between the pipes. Tyler Seguin scores twice on the day before his birthday and against his former team. Overall, a really, really good night for number 91. Luke Glendening gets involved in the scoring. Rupe Hintz puts one up on the board. We really saw effective scoring from all 4 lines from this Dallas Stars team. Really a perfect team effort and really all you can ask for from this team after they got embarrassed the way they did on Friday, and they bounced back in a big way. Not only did they do it, at home whenever they really needed to win, they did it against a very, very good team in the Boston Bruins, who they lost to earlier this season. And, this Boston Bruins team is certainly on the inside of this playoff picture, a team that's looking to make some noise in the postseason once that postseason does arrive. So this is a huge bounce back win for the Stars. They have their next 4 games lined up at home, and this is the exact kind of win that they needed in order to keep things going in the right direction moving forward, as the opponents are just going to get tougher with Calgary, Colorado, teams like that coming into town here in the next couple of games. We're going to break down this game entirely on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Stars. Hope to see you there. You're not going to want to miss it.
The Boston Bruins had to end their road trip and the month of January on a sour note, but luckily tonight was the low point for both, and now both are over. Locked On Bruins tries to turn the page after an ugly one in Dallas.
An old friend in Tyler Seguin, who scored the first and 6th goals for the Dallas Stars in a lopsided 6-1 victory by the home team over the Boston Bruins, who finish this 3-game road trip with a record of 1-1-1. It was a very strong month of January for the Boston Bruins, but to end it this way, not ideal. They'll now head home to take on the expansion Seattle Kraken on Tuesday night. Not much in the way of bright spots in this one. Eric Haula was added to the COVID-19 list right before the game. Steve Fogarty made his his Boston Bruins debut rather. And the Bruins just looked like a team eager to get home and to start fresh with the calendar set to turn to the month of February. So the Bruins blown out. You can catch more on this game on the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast, Monday through Friday, hosted by me.
The Minnesota Wild won on the road last night thanks to 4 goals and 40 saves in net. It was still just barely enough to beat the Islanders in New York, though, and our Locked On Wild host explains why that was post-game.
Not even Barry Trotz can slow down Kirill Kaprizov. Hey everybody, Seth Topal, host of Locked On Wild, your daily Minnesota Wild podcast, recapping a 4-3 win for the Minnesota Wild against the New York Islanders on the road. The Wild get goals from Kirill Kaprizov, more on him in a bit. They also get goals from Matt Boldy, Brandon Duhaime, and Joel Eriksson Ek, and 40 saves from Kaapo Kähkönen to pick up their 27th win of the season, a 5-game winning streak for the Minnesota Wild, who are also 16-4-2 since November 24th, and they pick up their second 9-game point streak of the season for the first time in franchise history. The Wild got off to a hot start and had to ride Kähkönen to finish out the game, but Kirill Kaprizov's goal ended up being the equalizer. And listen to this for Kirill Kaprizov's stats in his last 20 games. 13 goals, 21 assists, and the Minnesota Wild have outscored their opponents 28-13 with him on the ice in 5-on-5 situations. An absolute monster for the Minnesota Wild. But Kevin Fiala heating up as well, and this Minnesota Wild team is rolling right along now that their regular slate of games is back. For more on the Minnesota Wild, make sure to follow along with Locked On Wild wherever you listen to podcasts.
The New York Islanders had chances to win on Sunday, but just couldn't pull it together for long enough to put the Wild away. After a frustrating loss, our Locked On Islanders host tells you how the New York mistakes cost it the win.
Gil Martin of Locked On Islanders here. Islanders fall to the Minnesota Wild 4-3 at the UBS Arena. Two major things from this game. Number one, the goaltending not as sharp, and the Islanders need outstanding goaltending to win, playing their style. And Ilya Sorokin, for the second game in a row, just didn't have it. The Islanders fell behind quickly 2-0. The first goal especially, one that he would really want back. You can come back down 2-0 against a team that's struggling like the Flyers, but against Minnesota, that's a whole different ball game. And the Islanders did get back into the game, but never got equal. And then the second thing is you need a consistent 60-minute effort, and the Islanders didn't do that either. Too many gaps defensively, too many breakdowns, and the result is the 4-3 loss. For more, listen to the Locked On Islanders podcast with me, Gil Martin, wherever you get podcasts.
The leaders in the Metropolitan stayed on top by getting another win at home. Carolina's third period goal ended up being the difference, and our Locked On Hurricanes host tells you everything you need to know after the victory.
Jared Ellis here, host of Locked On Hurricanes, and tonight saw the Carolina Hurricanes win their fourth straight game tonight against the San Jose Sharks. And like all the past four wins, it hasn't been the prettiest. But the Carolina Hurricanes, they dug deep and found a way to win. Andrei Svechnikov and Vincent Trocheck scored very timely goals. Andrei being the one to score the game winner in the second straight game tonight against San Jose, and the previous game against Ottawa in a shootout. So you know what? Svetch happens, folks. Get over it. And we also had another outstanding goaltender performance from Freddie Anderson. He has won 24 of his 30 starts with the Hurricanes. That is the most all time in the first 30 games with a new club by a goaltender. So now the Hurricanes can use this break heading into the All-Star game to regroup, recharge, unless your names are Rod Brind'Amour, Sebastian Aho, and Frederik Andersen, because they're on the way to Vegas now. Tune in to Locked On Hurricanes for the recap of this game, as well as all of your daily Carolina Hurricanes needs.
The San Jose Sharks had a hard time getting going on the second night of a back-to-back, and it showed in losing to the Hurricanes. Our Locked On Sharks host tells you everything he saw Sunday from San Jose.
The Sharks offense lost to sea versus the Carolina Hurricanes. I'm JD Young of Locked On Sharks. The Sharks fall 2-1 to the Carolina Hurricanes. A late goal by Svechnikov is the icing on the cake for the Canes. Sharks very sluggish, especially after playing a back-to-back game against the Panthers on Saturday, and then turning around having to play another game versus the Canes. James Reimer continues to play well, but the Sharks offense just continues to be able to struggle to find goals. Rudolph Balcer's probably the only goal, but then, the big names like Hurdle and Timo just couldn't get anything going. So we'll have our reactions to both games tonight from the weekend, or on tomorrow's podcast of Locked On Sharks, wherever you can find podcasts such as Apple, Spotify, and of course, subscribe on YouTube.
That's all for today on Locked On Now NHL, and thank you for making Locked On Now your first listen every weekday. Now that you're done here, head over to Locked On NHL or your local team's Locked On podcast. I'm Daniella Bruce, and this has been Locked On Now.